Welcome back to part two. I got interrupted from a power outage, so welcome to my life. Yeah. Anyways, I'll just start all over again since that one is kind of scratched. Yeah. Welcome back. Oh yeah. So about my co-host Gumby is we're taking a holiday break from current events, so I'm going to be covering more on Ukraine and Russia stuff. Um, but yeah, a lot's been going on. We got Brussels with frozen Russian assets. We got um, I think Driscoll, the U.S. Army secretary or something, was sidelined and sacked by Hegseth. Um, we got some 300 plus drones, one of the largest drone attack onto Russian territory. So yeah, let's get into it. Second, I'm gonna make it here. Yeah, so as I was saying before I got interrupted, um, essentially Ukraine wants to have a NATO-like alliance, but mostly backed by United States. Because if you think of, the only reason why NATO is as fierce on the world stage as is because of United States backing. However, for those people who are watching and don't know this, NATO Article 5, meaning when one country is attacked, all comes to its defense. Um, it has only been enacted one time. 9/11 was the only time that NATO Article 5 has ever been active. So, um, but again, going to this, I'm probably gonna repeat this because it's important. Everybody, Europeans and Americans, mostly Americans, American politicians, within the Trump administration is like, Pete Hegseth and Marco Rubio and all these guys are like, the NATO, the U.S. commitment to NATO is ironclad, and yeah, I don't know about that anymore, because you still have to think that the Trump administration is an American first agenda that essentially means, foreign wars, uh, even involved, uh, with a potential NATO ally. Yeah, in the U.S., I do believe that the U.S. will come up with some reason in saying that, well, you shouldn't have done that, or I'm speaking from a unprovoked point of view. If Russia decides to go after one of the Eastern European Baltic country, Moldova, Romania, countries like those, potentially Georgia, and United States will say, well, it's just another one of those Ukrainian issue. Um, yeah, so let's continue. it's you know it also comes down to what Zelensky is pretty much. What do we have here? Can't hear. No way. Can't hear a video. Can't hear me. I don't know why I keep doing that to myself. No audio from me or video. Me check. Hi. Hi, Ethan. Testing, testing, testing. It's coming through. My sound is coming through, I think.
Army is advancing very, very slowly in this region, and the Ukrainians believe that it would probably take them several months at least to be able to conquer that territory. So Putin really has a choice here. Does he make some sort of compromise and effectively claims that territory? And President Trump is proposing to just turn it into a demilitarized zone, possibly into some sort of free economic zone. Nobody really has any real idea of what all this means. But it would effectively save Putin the.
By the way, this guy looked like a freaking alien. Just saying. This guy looks like some Area 51. I mean, his glasses are, yeah,
Effort of having to fight
just
for it while
sorry.
then being able to claim that the
So what
Ukrainians have
is this what
effectively
British people
abandoned
look
it.
like?
Yeah, as we heard, I mean, that plan apparently includes security guarantees. They're supposed to be like NATO's Article 5.
Oh, yeah, sorry for the people who kind of missed 3 minutes of the video. Yeah, it's they're essentially just saying that, Ukrainians are willing to continue fighting um without being, without the Trump selling out the Ukrainians. And the only reason why is the Ukrainians wants a NATO-like security guarantee. So now you're all caught up.
But not actual NATO membership. I mean, you've studied Russian behavior for decades. I mean, would Russia accept that, and would something like that actually deter Putin from coming back for more later?
Well, I think it depends very much on the nature of these guarantees. And I think we have to be careful with the word guarantee here, because what does it actually mean in practice? I mean, security guarantees always depend on the quality of your armed forces, first of all, then of your political relationships with allies, all these things. But quite understandably, the Ukrainians are saying, look, if we have to give up some territory, and effectively Zelensky is accepting that he's probably going to have to do that, even though he's claiming that he's going to have to put this to a national referendum, that in return from their allies, they do receive something reliable in the form of security assurances. But at the end of the day,
Here's what my take on that is, with the referendum and potential, Zelensky essentially signing into law or hold an election is the everybody, from the United States, from Europe, maybe not so much Europe, from Russia, is like Zelensky is is a illegitimate president. Um, I mean, which seems kind of silly to me, because I didn't know that we were following. I didn't know the Russian election was an example to follow. But anyways, I mean, Zelensky has already said, hey, he's willing to hold an election within, 60 to 100 days. But hey, just guarantee that the election will be honest and give us a security guarantee so the country doesn't go into chaos and mayhem during this election period. Obviously, the Russians somehow didn't like that idea, and the United States freaking out, as well. So
I think it's going to be down to the Ukrainian armed forces to be Ukraine's ultimate security guarantee. And here, in fact, the assistance of Ukraine's allies is extraordinarily important, because it is going to require building up the Ukrainian army, making sure it's properly equipped, properly trained, and in a position to fight if it absolutely needs to. And that will then be an effective deterrent. And I think the Russians have learned one thing from this war, which is that their assumption that the Ukrainians simply wouldn't have the will to fight, which seemed to be, them to be the case in 2014 when they annexed Crimea. That's on this occasion proven to be completely wrong. The country has mobilized very effectively. It's kept the Russians at bay now for nearly 4 years, and the losses inflicted on the Russian side have been absolutely colossal.
The Ukrainians are proposing a demilitarized free economic zone in the Donbas region where U.S. businesses would be able
So
to operate.
what this means is essentially, of course, during the original 28 plus peace plan is that the Ukrainians and the United States propose to give up all of Donbass, all of the red, including this area that's shaded green, that's not taken. They want to hand that over. Bad idea because of this area has been fortified for the past 10 years. So yeah, it's an open season if they just give this over to the Russians. But they're saying that they want to create an economic zone. I'm assuming a version of DMZ in the Korea. So yeah.
Now, Russia has been trying to take control of that region completely for months.
This would mean real, solid, legally binding security guarantees for our country.
So it's not clear how Zelensky's plan is actually being received by the U.S., but with Ukraine refusing to accept the surrender of Donbas, the head of NATO is issuing a pretty dire warning.
We are Russia's next target. And we are already in harm's way.
This guy, I like this guy, but man, he pretty much understands like how Trump works at this point because every time I see this guy talk, or a journalist is asking him questions, he's always, Trump is the one who broke the deadlock, and Trump is obviously he's speaking Trump's language to appease, butter him up. Yeah, I like this guy. He's a cool dude.
When I became NATO Secretary General last year, I warned that what is happening in Ukraine could happen to allied countries too. That we had to shift to a wartime mindset.
Joining me.
Well, it has already happened. They're just not willing to do anything about it. You have Georgia, Crimea, those are just all starters, and you have drone incursions. What's mind-boggling to me is like you have just days, months, weeks with no drone incursion within any other European countries, Poland, Romania, like that, and then one day you just get 20, and somehow that's considered an accident. But okay, and of course, they don't know where it's coming from or how. The Europeans are not equipped enough to combat a secondary front, even a secondary frontal attack from Russia. Even if Ukraine is busy fighting, fighting the Russians, if Russians decides to open up a second front and go after a Baltic country or I don't know, a southern country like Georgia or Moldova, I don't think Europe is well equipped to really combat that. So
Now is Ivo Dalter, the former U.S. ambassador to NATO. He joins us live from Brussels and NATO headquarters. Thanks so much for being with us.
Great to be here, Audie. Thanks for having me on.
So first, I want to talk about what we just heard, the wartime footing. Is this fear real, palpable, that you're feeling in that office? And if it is Europe really acting that way, right? Are they pushing as hard as they can?
So the fear is in parts of NATO headquarters and in part of the NATO countries. It's particularly strong, of course, in the countries that border Russia, the Baltic states, Poland, other states in Eastern Europe, and the Nordic countries. Indeed, the Nordic countries, Sweden, Finland, Norway, have prepared for many years for the possibility of a confrontation. It's one of the reasons why Finland and Sweden joined this alliance just a couple of years ago. And the Swedes have just issued a leaflet saying what to do in case of war. There is this sense that war is no longer a theoretical possibility. It's a very real possibility. So one of the things that they are doing is they're spending a lot more on defense, very significant amount. An agreement to spend up to 3.5% on real defense capabilities and another 1.5% on defense-related capabilities, 5% of GDP. It's a big deal. The biggest fear, though, is actually not from Russia. It's from the United States. And the question of whether the United States shares this view of Russia or not.
I want to talk about the money a little bit more because this free economic zone is, it looks kind of like an appeal to the Trump administration, whose peace plans often have something like this economic model built in. It's something that they used in the past. I think it was Serbia and Kosovo back all the way in 2020. Obviously, with Israel and Palestine, they talked about making like a resort area. And so what do you make of Ukraine basically trying to say, look what you could have? Do you think that's a winning move?
Well, it's clear that President Trump and his administration look at the world as a real estate set of real estate areas in which the resources that.
I mean, everybody knows that this whole peace deal, proposal between the Ukrainian or between the United States and Russia is all. I mean, half of it is on how can the United States and Russia benefit from this at the end of the war? I mean, that's half of it. And then the other half is like, okay, how can we shaft the Ukrainians, um, for them to give up eventually? Um, Yeah, I mean, you just look at the delegations from each side. You have Kirill Dmitriev, who is, the senior financial advisor for Russia. You have Jared Kushner, who somehow got involved um, with what's his name? Steve Witkoff, all these financial Mongols. Uh, yeah, I mean, I don't know why this is obvious. I mean, I saw this from a mile away. Of course, the United States is trying to get something out of it, as it usually does. But at what cost?
Maybe in the ground are critical. Remember that a few months ago, Ukraine actually signed an agreement with the United States about the exploration of critical minerals and natural resources.
That went out the window a long time ago because Russian occupies half those territories already.
A ceasefire and a peace were.
What you think? You think the Russians are just gonna hand those over?
To be.
Maybe they will hand over if maybe they will hand over if there's a bigger and better deal that the Ukrainians, or I keep saying Ukrainians, that the US and Russia can come up with.
Be settled. So I think what President Zelensky is trying to do is to say, we're the good guys. We're not the ones who are standing in the way of peace. It's the Russians who are standing in the way of peace, and putting on the table a plan that says this is what we would accept, including an economic incentive for the United States to buy into it. I don't think this will get us any closer to peace. Peace will require the Russians to agree to something that the Ukrainians and the Europeans can agree to, and for 4 years that hasn't been the case. This is more a public relations effort by the Ukrainians to demonstrate to the President of the United States that his statement that the problem is Zelensky not accepting the peace agreement, that's not correct. He's more than willing to accept a ceasefire and indeed perhaps open up economic opportunities for the United States.
So Ambassador Dalder, thank you so much for speaking with us.
Oops. Let me grab something, pull this link. So we know that the Army Secretary, he was the one that visited.
Europe has signaled its continued support.
Visited Ukraine, pretty much, giving Ukraine the peace deals. And I don't know if it's the 28-point peace deal. But I think that he was sacked by Hegseth. And I think that I don't I feel like every individual who I don't know if he favored Ukraine or not. I know that he was like a sent by Trump as an ultimatum. You know, maybe no, because he wasn't the one that did the 28-point peace plan. Um, I think that was just from Steve Witkoff, but he did presented peace deals. So, but yeah, I want to read more on this. So, U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has removed U.S. Army blah 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 from peace talks. Yeah, Hegseth is reported to have decided to sideline Driscoll from the talks. He had exceeded his remit, so I guess he got more involved than he should have. Um, was exerting himself a bit too much. He had his hand slapped, so I don't know what that means. Yeah, that's interesting to me. I'm almost thinking like, did he sidle? Maybe mm, I don't know if he's. I don't want to say that he supports the Ukrainians, but it is reported that the Pentagon detects that has descended into an atmosphere of paranoia, chaos. Uh-huh. His standing with Donald Trump's administration as Joseph Kirkley has become increasingly popular with Europeans thanks to experience and calm manner. Fair. This led him to taking the lead role in Ukraine peace talks. In November, he was tasked with presenting. He was presented with the 28-point peace plan. Yeah, so that was it. That was a shit show. Nobody in their right mind was gonna accept that, and obviously they weren't gonna. I mean, the Ukrainians were not gonna budge on that on a Christmas wish list for the Russians. That made him the most senior member of the Trump administration to visit Ukraine. One Keith Kellogg used to be the U.S. Russian envoy, but he favored. And this is one thing that made me that's interesting to me. It's like everybody who essentially from the Trump administration who decided to support Ukraine gets sacked. So I'm afraid that what if Driscoll actually, started thinking, I don't know, pull his head out of his ass, and started thinking that okay, maybe he's on the wrong side of history or the right side of history, depending on who you ask. And I know Pete Hex. Okay, so I'm not a fan of Pete Hegseth. I think he's a clown. He's a freak show. Um, but I think that he might have sacked Driscoll because of Driscoll might be getting too close to Zelensky in the Ukrainian side of things. Similar to Keith Kellogg, he was the original the U.S. Ukraine Russian envoy from the United States representative side, and he got sacked. So he is I think he's now representing the Ukrainians in a manner. Um, but yeah, he that's what I'm. I think everybody who's getting close to Zelensky is just getting sacked. Even Zelensky's own circle is getting sacked. So yeah. Um, During this trip last month, Driscoll was instructed to secure Zelensky's support of the U.S. peace plan, so that's the Russian Christmas wish list. U.S. European ambassadors involved in the talk described Driscoll as an official who showed little interest in finding compromise that might help the Ukrainian side. So I think that this is a weird comment for me because I'm thinking maybe it's a maybe it's Trump or Hegseth who made an ultimatum for who presented the ultimatum to the Ukrainians, and Driscoll is just the messenger. Um, and he just got caught in it. Obviously, he's I don't know why you would have I don't know how political he is. I know that he's a army secretary. Yeah, army secretary. So I don't know why he would be involved. It has been suggested that Driscoll's negotiation style may have caught the attention of the president himself, as Trump prides himself on his own reputation as a deal maker. Tough deal maker. Driscoll has been due to return to Kiev 2 weeks ago. Has been due to return to Kiev, okay, but did not show up. Huh. Yeah, so that's also another thing that the U.S. Has been doing lately is the U.S. has been pulling out a lot of negotiations, even within Europe. Um, I believe there's a NATO meeting last week that Marco Rubio was supposed to show up, and somehow um, the NATO Secretary General was defending for Marco Rubio. I mean, Marco Rubio pretty much just said, "Hey, I'm not going to waste my time. That there's no substance in these meetings. We're just going in circles." So yeah, I don't know. Ukrainian officials who were also told he would be in Paris on Monday, 1st of December, but again he canceled it. Yep, that's yeah. So this is typical American politics these days. Our delegation was surprised, obviously, not allowed to come. Huh. It's obviously. I mean, duh. Ukrainian and European officials believe Driscoll's absence is a part of a wider struggle for control over the peace process. As a closer friend of U.S., yeah. So J.D. Vance and Driscoll has been, I believe they went to Yale or one of the universities together, so they've known each other. They're best buddies. Seen as part of the group around him inside the administration that pushes a non-interventionist line. Marco Rubio has taken up more of a prominent role. Yep. December. Meeting in Paris. Yeah, I don't think that's gonna happen either. A third group, Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, is also playing a visible role. I I'm more man. How many times have Steve Witkoff? Isn't he the primary guy that's visiting? That's been tasked to deal with Ukraine and Russia. So how many times has he been to Moscow? Quite a bit, quite a bit. Maybe 4, 5, 6 times now. I guarantee you, he has never visited Ukraine though. Kyiv, similar to Jared Kushner. I mean, Driscoll was just a messenger. Obviously, he wasn't there to negotiate on behalf. He's just saying, "Hey, here's the 28-point peace plan. Take it or leave it." One source familiar with the talk said that it was funny how the tone of the negotiation often changes depending on which of the three groups has the upper hand. That's a good point. That is a very good point. So you have Steve, you have Marco Rubio. Driscoll is one of them. That's surprising to me that Driscoll is considered as a um, yeah, because Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner was essentially, I mean, maybe, probably there's two groups now because Marco Rubio is the one that's taking on the European lead, and then Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner is the one that are taking directly um, with Ukraine and with the United States and Russian role. So yeah, I got another thing to share here. think that's a pretty big deal that came recently. Let's see if can I reload this? Does it play?
The European Union and Kiev have drawn
Okay.
up an action plan to propel Ukraine on its path to EU membership. The two
So a part of the one of the 28-point peace plan was this was this wasn't in I think this was allowed for the Europe for Ukraine to be asserted into European Union, given that they meet all criterias um and all that stuff or all that requirements, the European Union requirements to be able to join them. So um yeah, I think that not Brussels, Hungary was against this. So
partners unveiled the agreement on Thursday following an informal meeting in Lviv,
mhm.
Ukraine, of the EU ministers responsible for European affairs. The aim is to bypass Hungary's political veto on the official opening of accession negotiations, a step that requires the unanimity of all member states.
It is very clear that we are 26 member countries that see a future
Where's she from?
Ukraine
Danish.
in EU. It is not a matter of if.
Obviously, Mark Rutte, the Secretary General for NATO, says the same thing. And I think that these are some pretty strong words when you say like Ukraine is on a irreversible path to NATO membership. Similar language here from Marie saying that it's not a matter of when or not matter of if but when. So it's a dangerous um, wording for these guys to preach like that, but at the same time, yeah.
It is a matter of when.
Ukraine will informally proceed with the reforms it's expected to implement with support from the Commission, allowing technical negotiations to continue.
They all focus on strengthening the rule of law, fighting corruption, and building the strong, accountable democratic institutions in Ukraine. And these institutions Ukraine needs for the future accession process.
The plan comes at a critical moment for Kiev as it faces mounting pressure from the US to swiftly sign a peace deal with Russia amid uncertainty over its future funding.
Yeah, that was a pretty big, because they were essentially asking Brussels for money, because the Ukrainian fund is going to run out April 2026. Yeah. And of course the EU is really hard pushing for the frozen Russian assets to be released to the Ukrainians. I don't know what that's going to look like. Brussels is against that. So the reason, so just for context purposes, the reason why Brussels is against this idea is because a bulk, a third of the European, the frozen Russian assets reside in Brussels, Belgium, and they're afraid that down the road there's going to be legal course from the Russian side against Belgium, and Belgium or Brussels is going to be a lone wolf in this, because they're essentially the ones that hold on to a significant bulk of the frozen Russian assets. Yeah, and I don't know why, because I feel like they would have had people, they would have had other European countries saying that we would share the burden for Brussels, if it does come down to a legal course. But I just read today that Italy also supported Brussels on against the frozen Russian assets to be released to Ukrainians. Yeah, let's see. So EU and Ukraine agreed to a 10-point peace plan to speed up Kiev's secession bid, despite Hungary's veto. Probably, I would say probably Slovakia is there too. Yeah, I do know that. It's late here. I do know that Hungary is a strong Russian partner. Viktor Orban is a, I mean, he's essentially in bed with Putin. I would not be surprised if Hungary becomes a Belarus 2.0, but they're also NATO and EU, so there's that. European Union have drawn up action plans to propel Ukraine on its path to EU membership, despite talks being blocked by Viktor Orban, framing the move as essential to provide Ukraine. We see the membership. Yep. I don't care. A step that requires a unanimous approval of all 27 EU leaders. So that to me is I'm almost thinking like, because the EU is essentially saying that, you know, even though it requires a unanimous decision of all 27 member states, including Hungary, but if EU just saying, you know, bug off, we're just going to ignore this one country, and would that work? Would that work for NATO? You know, because there are a few countries that are, you know, namely 3 countries that disagree with Ukraine being part of NATO, and it's often the same country listed, you know, against in this case Hungary, Slovakia, and United States. But United States is not a part of EU, so there's that. Ukraine will informally proceed with the reforms it's expected to implement with support from Commission, along technical negotiation to continue despite enriched. So the problem with reforms, boy, do they have a lot of things to do. I mean, you look at the past month and a half, 2 months, and you're just seeing corruption after corruption. You know, at the highest level of the Ukrainian government, you have, you know, Midich, the energy minister, who essentially stole 100 million. He's Israeli, by the way, Israeli citizen. Fun fact for all of you. And then you have Yermak, you know, pretty much the VP for Ukraine, you know, forced to step down, you know, on a potential corruption charges. I mean, yeah, it's ugly. We are now front loading and all the technical work. That means still move on. This cannot be a blockade for eternity. It has to be lifted. An EU official said it was important not to lose time to get Ukrainian close to finish lines. The country is more advanced. Ukraine's war in Russia has injected newfound urgency and political weight to a historical doormat for EU policy. Made official candidate with so pretty much countries like it's like, because of the war, you have countries that are expedited into NATO, into EU. You have Finland, Sweden, who you know, within, I don't know, a year and a half, 2 years, was a part of NATO, and they're essentially clearing some of the roadblocks or expediting for certain countries like Moldova and Ukraine to be a part of EU due to the war situation. Orban has so far resisted calls for him to lift his veto, saying he opposes Ukraine's secession. While, I mean, I don't trust. It's not. I don't even trust. I don't. his words means nothing to me. I mean, he even said, he doesn't view Zelensky he doesn't view Ukraine actually as a legitimate sovereign country. And I believe he also said he doesn't believe that Zelensky is a legitimate leader. Yeah, but hey, at least Zelensky's opponent doesn't just vanish. Yeah. The plan follows informal talks between EU. So that's just pretty much allowing Ukraine counterparts for press to see. Does it list the 10-point plans? No. Yeah, so here's some of the anti-corruption. So Kiev also commits to adopting a anti-corruption age strategy. Oh, I'm tired. And state anti-corruption program by the second quarter of next year. Investigation is also currently underway into alleged high-level kickback scheme involving Ukrainian's nuclear energy Energoatom, which prompted the resignation of Yermak. Yep. Yeah. According to media reports, a revamped 20-point peace plan presented to propose EU membership for Ukraine by 2027. That's pretty early, if I gotta say. That's really early. What's the average EU session membership? Yeah, the average EU membership session takes around 9 to 10 years from formal application. When did Ukraine submit EU membership session? Okay, I mean, I guess it's 5 years, so that's still significant. But they're on the accelerated procedure, so yeah. Well, it's a good time, good stopping point. I'll probably be streaming tomorrow as well, so got a lot more good stuff to discuss. Yeah, I mean, I had a power outage, so I had to redo this whole thing again, which was annoying. But hey, I have a power station now, so now we're good. Don't forget to like, subscribe, follow, all that YouTube stuff. Yeah, because I gotta pay for the power station, and it's not cheap. So, till next time, kisses.
The storms we chase are leading us, and love is all we'll ever try.